Welcome back. Happy Valentine's Day to those who celebrate. And because it's been Valentine's this week, I wanted to talk about loving learning. This is the Sales Ops Effect, where we strengthen our skills as strategic leaders to grow businesses with integrity. And I love learning. I did one of my strengths finders. I'm looking at it on my wall now, and it's got philomath in there. I didn't know philomath was a word. I learned that because it's wanting to learn and loving the learning journey. I consider learning to be different from studying. Again, I'm neurodivergent, so how I view most things is different from the general population because certain things are just difficult for my brain. I found studying difficult at school because studying felt like the purpose of it was to remember a thing in the presence of somebody else to judge you to see if you remembered it. And that wasn't a strong enough purpose or motivation. It gave me no momentum, nothing. To actually read a book, listen to anything, watch anything, nothing. Just to remember for remembrance sake, it meant nothing to me. Whereas learning means like the pursuit of understanding. And that feels good. That feels like answering the why question over and over and over again. And it's not about anybody else testing you. It's about your own understanding. That's the end result, is that you understand it, not that somebody else has said, on this day at this time, you've remembered these things. And so therefore, great. It just didn't work for me. And so when I left my standard education, school and college, when you're at school, for a lot of us, we were taught that when this is what you need to learn, so that when you go out into the world, you've already got everything, and you're going to be judged by what you studied and your grades at 16 or whatever for the rest of your life, and you're not. It doesn't take long for people to just not look at your grades anymore on your CV. But that's what you get told over and over again. And it also basically implies that you won't be learning anything more as an adult. But that's not true, is it? Because we learn things even though we don't want to. We experience things over and over and over again. And it's only by understanding and learning that we, either choose to continue or choose to change something. We do continue to learn. So it's worth continuing to learn on purpose. And for that reason, I'd like to highlight the ways more recently that I've been focusing on my learning, and that's with courses and with podcasts. Now, the courses that I've been on more recently haven't been specifically about sales ops, because at this point, it's more about community. It's more about talking things through. Yes, you get to learn the latest best practices, but still, a lot of courses are designed around large businesses where you've got a whole sales ops team, and there's hundreds of millions that you're dealing with. It's an already well-established business rather than one that's scaling up. So a lot of the courses aren't giving me what I need. However, the courses that I've been on are more about discussing the human challenges around things and about efficiency and getting the most out of people whilst still treating people well and having that sense of community and working together. So that's where I've been going, and they've been much more business-minded. But what I really wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to highlight a few podcasts that I've been listening to and why I like listening to them. And they're not all specifically sales ops based, because again, learning doesn't always have to be direct. If you understand what you've learned, then you can apply the learning to different situations. I like to think of it as having different logic trees. That's why you can effectively pull analogies from something, because if X equals Y here, then X equals Y over there is, quite likely. And it's the whole transferable skills thing, right? So it's also transferable learning. What you can pick up from one podcast or one YouTube video might help you, that was about work, might help you in your personal life, even though you didn't specifically need that to deal with this other thing, if that makes sense. So here are a few podcasts that I've really enjoyed recently. In no particular order, let's start with the APM podcast. It's the podcast based out of the UK, is the Chartered Membership for project professionals over here. And it's where I had my project management training. It's what the MAPM stands for at the end of my name. And I love the APM. I've been with them for a long time now. And even though they talk about all kinds of projects, and some of them are unfathomably large, because they're talking to the real people that are working on those projects and, building railroads and missions to space and dealing with the COVID pandemic and everything like that, you get to hear the thought processes that going into making certain decisions. And I think that's really helpful. And they're also talking about managing risk and things like that. So whilst you might not be building spacecraft, you can still listen to another human talk about their thought processes and the things that went right, as well as the things that didn't go so well. Because as we focus a lot about things that don't go as well, but sometimes things do just work out even better than we planned for. And it's worth listening to that as well. So that just helps to sharpen my project management skill set and just to keep everything fresh. And I enjoy that. Next up is The Revenue Formula by Growblocks. And I've only recently started listening to them, maybe in the last, I want to say 6 months or so, but I really enjoy their energy. And so this one is the specifically sales ops revenue style focused podcast. There are a few, but they're the ones who I regularly don't skip. And I think it's because of their mannerisms, and they just seem more human and less robotic when they're talking about stuff. And I like that, because sometimes when you listen to certain sales podcasts, they can get very bro heavy and rah, 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 and it's just all too much. Whereas just talking about the realities of the situation and how to deal with it and their perspective and how they're looking at different things, I just find it easier to listen to. And it helps to keep me in the world of the latest thoughts that are out there, because sometimes you can get very bogged down in just doing your day job and not actively seek the best practices. And so that is one that I regularly don't skip, even when I've got like a whole big backlog of podcasts. I do like listening to that while I'm making my breakfast in the morning. So that one is obviously much more specific to sales ops. And I do like this. I think there'll be a steady player for 2024. The next one up is Start Being Visible by Mildred Talabi. Again, probably only in the last 4 or 5 months or so. And she's very straight talking. She has guests on sometimes, and it just feels really refreshing to hear someone that is more similar to me demographically, if I'm being entirely honest, because sometimes when you're only listening to people that are American, because a lot of podcasts are by Americans, that's simply because there's just more of you than there are British people. It sometimes just feels a little bit apart from you, a little bit separated, because we do have differences in our culture, and it's only tiny things, but it's nice to hear someone from home essentially going through some of these things and helping you out and explaining visibility and having that in your career and being comfortable with it, and particularly as women, because we do have different challenges to most men in the workplace, and that's just most. It's not with all men. So I enjoy that. It's new, it's fresh. It's new to me, rather. It's fresh, and it just helps to remind me about branding, personal branding, because that is something that I've always been more about reputation rather than branding. Again, I sometimes struggle to even truly understand what branding is. So it's worth having a steady drip of a reminder that you do actively have to make yourself visible. Just doing your work isn't enough. And so I really appreciate that podcast. Next up, we have De-Stress Your Business by Paddy Mann and Alexis Kingsbury. And I like this because that it's all about efficiency and documenting things and delegating and freeing up the business so that things just flow better. And you know how much of that we need to do. We need to collaborate with people. We need to delegate, even though we don't necessarily have people in our own team. We need to sort of delegate to people on the same level as us to form a project across the business. And it's just so crystal and so clear and just seems so obvious, but it's really worth the reminder. And I saw there was a conference that I was at in September, and then that's where I was first introduced to this podcast. And I appreciate it. Again, it's reminders to keep yourself sharp. And last but by no means least, it's the Boardroom podcast by Keishel, Charmaine, and Cherie. Again, something I started listening to, I want to say roughly 9 months ago now. And it's for people who are working inside of businesses, as well as people who are building businesses on their own. But it really is about building up your character. I'm very big on strategic leadership. It's what the Sales Operations Leadership Skills course is about. It's strategic leadership and building yourself up in that role. And it's like having your sisters or your auntie sit you in a room and say, okay, look, this is what we're going to do. And this is how you need to think. And just being really just talking to your soul. And I need that. I need that in my life. And it's, again, nice to have a pick me up and a bit of a rah-rah. It's like business church. So I very much enjoy that. And I hope you do too. And speaking of the next thing that's coming up to help you with learning, admissions open for Sales Operations Leadership Skills on the 14th of March, 2024. So please look out for any notification, sign up on the wait list, because then you might hear new information first again, but it is going to be the 14th of March, 2024. And so stay tuned. We'll be talking a little bit more about it. And I really hope to see you on the day. Speak soon.